Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is Bex Reads, and today I am here to share with you some weekly reads from May 13th to the 19th. I actually read 5 books, but I'm only going to talk about 3 because I am doing a vlog for the others that I'm mentioning and I don't want to have to repeat myself. So, I read 3 books and they were all pretty meh, but I'm going to share my thoughts with you anyway. So the first book that I finished reading was When the Moon Hatched. I listened to this on audio. I did buy it through Libro FM because I was curious about this book, but I didn't want to buy the physical book if I didn't feel like I was going to love it. This is an adult fantasy romance. It is set in this world with dragons, and when dragons die, their bodies can either, just die, or they almost calcify and they turn into moons up in the sky. And if one of these moons falls down and shatters, then the pieces of that moon can be used for other magical things. And so people have been collecting pieces of these moons if they do fall. And in this we follow our main female character, Rave, who is an assassin who is being used by this very notorious rebellion group. She doesn't love the fact that they pretty much control her, but she does enjoy doing what she does as an assassin because she's really good at it. And she is after this notorious bounty hunter. She's trying to track him down. And something happens and she ends up imprisoned by these fae who are sort of using her as a political statement. And when she is on her trial almost, she catches the eye of Khan, who is our main male character. And Khan is immediately drawn to her because he senses that there's something about her that is really familiar. He helps her sort of escape this trial and imprisonment, and he takes her with him on his mission to try and track down all of the pieces of this moon that had fallen and reconstruct it. Because there is something very familiar about her, and he's trying to get her to try and remember what that is, because he knows what it is, but he wants her to try and remember that. And every now and then she will get glimpses of what that is, and other times she doesn't have a clue as to what he's trying to get her to remember. She also has this ability where certain, I think they're gods, can speak to her, like wind god, fire god, water god, other gods. And so she has this affinity with whatever god. I think it's the wind. I could be wrong. But she has that affinity as well. And through them journeying together to try and track down these moon shard pieces, more is explored about her past and their connection develops stronger. This was just an okay book for me. It started out really slow, although I will say the audiobook didn't really take that long to listen to. I felt like it was a really quick read. It just felt like it took forever for me to get interested in the plot of this story. I did like Rave's character. She's very witty, she's very snide and snarky. I liked her chemistry with Khan. I thought it was a very slow building relationship development. I liked the past and present timeline that sort of weaves together the story overall. However, as I mentioned, this was a very slow moving book, and there were times of it where, I'm not kidding you, I actually fell asleep listening to this audiobook. I think it was during a battle scene. She's trying to defeat something, and I literally fell asleep listening to it. I woke up, it was still in that battle scene. I don't know how long I was asleep. It could have been for 5 minutes. It could have been for half an hour. I don't know. But it was still in that battle scene, and I don't feel like I missed anything. I didn't love the audio narration of this audiobook. It isn't because the characters sounded monotone, because I do feel like they inflicted their voices. But something about the female narrator just did not work for me. I didn't love how she was narrating it. I can't remember if this is dual cast or multicast. I can't remember. It almost felt like there were 3 narrators, but there could have only been 2. Can't remember. But I liked the male narration more, but it still wasn't well enough because, like I said, I fell asleep. And it wasn't because the story didn't have action in it or anything. I mean, she was in the process of fighting for her life and killing something. It was just the way it was narrated and how long it was. I fell asleep. This is a very wordy book too, and it's not what I would consider like flowery or purple prose or anything, because I really didn't get that. She didn't use like a whole lot of like metaphors or anything like that really irritate me in books. It was just a lot of words to convey something that could have been said using fewer words, in my opinion. And I think that is one of the reasons why it took so long for me to get interested in this story, because I was like, what are we getting at here? When is the portion of this story where I finally understand the plot going to kick in? Because it was just a lot of words up until then. I also didn't love the smut scenes in this book. They were narrated to me, so that could have had something to do with it, but I feel like even if I were reading it, I wouldn't have loved the smut scenes because they just came off very cringy. Like, some of the things that the characters said to one another were just cringy. I felt like they should have just not talked during the whole act, because it would have been better. So this being a book in a series, I don't know that I want to continue on in it. I did love several things about this book. I really liked the dragon lore and how, you know, they become moons and then their pieces get used and how they have a connection to certain people. I really loved that. The dragons in this book were awesome. So I don't know if I want to continue on with this series. Maybe if it was like different narrators, or maybe if I could try and read it physically, I don't know. But where I'm standing at right now is I'm not on the hype train that this book seems to have gotten. I've heard mixed things. People either really love this book or people either DNF this book, is what I've heard. So I'm sitting in the middle. I did like it more than Fourth Wing, I will say that. But it just didn't blow me out of the water with how amazing it was. And I really wanted to love this because I love the idea of the dragons turning into moons and, you know, the pieces using for magic and stuff like that. So we'll see. I'm not saying it's a definite no, I won't continue on with this, but it definitely isn't one that I think I would reread. Maybe. See, I'm so conflicted with this. And that's where I stand. A book that I am not conflicted on, though, I have thoughts, is Raiders of the Lost Heart. This is a contemporary romance, and in this we are following Corey and Ford, who are archaeologists. Corey gets invited to go on this dig to try and find the remains of this ancient Aztec warrior who she has always thought she was a descendant of. It's a subject that she's really delved into. It was part of her like college dissertation or whatever, and she's very familiar with this history and this adventure that they're supposed to go on. So she's excited for this until she gets there and she realizes that she is having to work for Ford, who is like her rival, because they knew each other in college and apparently he betrayed her. He took an opportunity away from her. They had a moment or whatnot, and then she caught him like kissing another woman, and so she's just got like this really intense hatred for Ford. And Ford is on this dig because his mother is very sick, and if he can find these remains, it will get him a lot of money, but he needs Corey to do it because she is the expert in this ancient warrior's history. So they go on this, they try to find these remains or whatnot, and they bang a lot. So I was interested in this because the premise sounded so cute, like two archaeologists that don't like each other trying to track down these remains. I was wanting some like Rick and Evie type banter and chemistry between these characters because I find archaeology really interesting. In fact, there was a point in my life where I actually stated that I was going to go to college to become an archaeologist. Never happened. But at one point in my life, I stated that, like it was written in a yearbook. So I really wanted to love this, okay? But these two have got to be one of the most annoying couples I have ever read in a book. So the only thing that I liked about this book were the occupations, them being archaeologists, and I liked the fact that Corey was a very sexually confident character. Like, she brings her vibrator with her anytime like somebody brings up sex. She talks about it freely with no embarrassment, and I loved that. However, the only things that moved the plot of this book forward were banging and bickering. And it got so damn annoying because they would have a moment and you would think, okay, they're at this point where they're finally going to come together, they're going to work together, blah, blah. No, then they would fucking argue about the stupidest thing that if they just communicated with one another, it wouldn't have been an issue. But no, they're all like keeping stuff internally and, oh, I don't think he'll understand, I don't think she'll understand, oh, well, she trusts me if she finds this out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, just fucking talk to each other. Another thing that drove me freaking crazy was Corey's character, because she is this very sexually confident woman, right? However, she's a very attractive woman. People tell her she's like Laura Croft, and all she does throughout this book is complain about the fact that people see her as tits and ass and they don't respect her brain. She complains about it so damn much in this book, okay? And that wouldn't be a bad thing, except for the fact that what does she do 10 minutes into working on the dig with Ford? She fucks him. So it's like, you want people to take you seriously, right? You want them to see you as a professional in your job. And if you're so sexually confident, and, you know, people should just be able to have sex as two consenting adults, blah, 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 sure, okay. But if that's how you feel and you're that confident sexually, then why do you give so much shits about what people think of you if they just see you as this hot piece of ass archaeologist? Like, play into it. Really use that to your advantage, girl, and stop complaining about it because you're the one who's perpetuating this belief. If you start fucking your coworker 10 minutes into the job, like, people are going to say that you're tits and ass and sexual. They're gonna think that about you because that is what you're giving them, okay? Stop walking around your job site in tight titty showing tank tops and booty shorts if you're going to complain that people in your profession don't take you seriously. It's like, pick one or the other. Either complain about it or fix it. Figure it out. Either embrace this like sexy archaeologist who doesn't give a shit about what people think of her because you know that you have the beauty and the brains, or don't act and dress like it and then expect people not to think that about you while also complaining about it. If you don't like the situation you're in and you're capable of changing it, then either change it or embrace it. And I got so goddamn tired of listening to this girl complain about how nobody takes me seriously. I'm like, bitch, I wouldn't take you seriously either because you're fucking the dude 10 minutes into the job site. And on top of that, I feel like she had no fucking self-respect whatsoever because she sees Ford as this guy who betrayed her, who did her wrong, who, you know, took away the opportunity that she had, right? Why the hell would you sleep with him then? Oh, just because he's hot? According to you, half of the people you're working with on this dig site are hot. So why would you choose him if you think that he treated you this badly? If you think that he's this bad of a guy? Oh, sexual magnetism? Bitch, I don't care. If somebody treated me like shit and I had that big of a vendetta, I don't care if they were the most attractive damn person on the planet. I would not let them be all up in me. I wouldn't. No. So once again, make up your mind. Do you want to have this like argumentative, oh, I hate him, he did me wrong attitude, or do you want to fuck him? Like, pick one or the other. Okay, have some self-respect. Damn. I don't know how people could function being as horny as they are. I really can't. Like, it was almost like every chapter they were fucking one another. There is one point in this book where they're at like an exhibit together, right? And he's just like standing behind her and he says her name. And she's like, my arousal was dripping down my leg. Clean up by the mummy over here, please. Can we get a wet floor sign? My God, woman, really? He said your name. Calm down. Put some panties on to control that drippage. For shit's sake. So horny. And I just could not stand these two together because, as I've mentioned, okay, when I read, I become the main character, and in this, I was Corey, and I did not want to be Corey because Corey was stupid. For being as smart as she claims to be, oh my God, have some self-respect, use your brains. You can be a wet dream and a Webster dictionary all in one, baby. Embrace that shit. Use it to your advantage, okay? But no, she just complained the whole fucking time, and I'm supposed to feel sorry for her? Like, no, I'm sorry. I can't. You're annoying, and I hope you get lost in the jungle and eaten by a jaguar. I really do. I really wanted this to have like more archaeological adventure to it than it did. Now, the author did provide like a footnote of the research she did and whatnot, and like the factual things that she was inspired by, which I appreciated. For the most part, this is just a book about two people lost in the jungle fucking one another. So if that's your thing, here you go. But I could not stand this. And then the last book that I read was A Goblin of the Glade, which is book 2 in the Numinia Parable series. So I did make progress in working towards finishing a series. That was my goal this month. So this takes place 10 years after the events of the first book, A Daughter of the Trolls, which I absolutely loved. And in this, we're following a group of sisters, Primrose and her 2 twin sisters, who are goblins. They are the sisters of Rush, who was the main male character of the first book. And they are dealing with some lasting PTSD effects from when they were captured and imprisoned, and they had to watch their loved ones being tortured. Meanwhile, they're also dealing with new grief because a mother figure for them is dying. So they get this very cryptic message that they are supposed to go on this mission to try and find the forgotten Numinia gods and restore them to their power so that they could pretty much wipe out like the witches and the what they call bogies, the bad people in this story. So they set out on this mission with this very cryptic riddle with this puka shifter as a guide, traveling through this forest and these villages, trying to find these lost gods. And through this journey, it's full of folkloric creatures like kelpies and pukas and Baba Yaga, and just a mismatch of different folkloric creatures. And it's them trying to bond as sisters, also trying to work through their inner turmoil as far as their grief and their PTSD goes. I absolutely loved the first book in this series, A Daughter of the Trolls. If you're looking for a very whimsical, dark fairy tale with very low spice that has a main character with a disability, I highly recommend that book. This one was just okay for me. I didn't feel the same emotional connection to these characters as I did the characters from the first book. I got bored several times within this story of the journey that they went on and the things that they were trying to do because they just didn't have like as high as stakes, and they got kind of boring to read about. The Numinia gods that are introduced in this one weren't introduced into the first one, and that's because the first book was meant as a standalone. The author wrote it thinking it was going to be a standalone, but people enjoyed that one so much that she was encouraged to continue on, so she had to build upon the lore of this world. So the Numinia gods that were introduced in here, like, I didn't have any sort of connection to them. I really didn't care about their story in this book. I did like the sister dynamic in here because even though they're triplets, they all have very different personalities, and how they're dealing with their grief is very different. So they're learning how to come to terms with that and how to sort of understand and tolerate how each other deals with their grief. And I really love that. I really love sibling and family dynamics in books. I loved the atmosphere of this book. Once again, it's like a forest setting. You're going through these different villages, and I loved all the folklore that was in here. I loved seeing the puka shifter. I loved seeing the kelpie. I loved Baba Yaga being introduced. So I liked several aspects of this, but it just wasn't as good as book 1, in my opinion. And I didn't know if the author was going to write more books in this. I thought it was supposed to be a duology, but after reading the author's note, it turns out that this is going to be a 3 or 4 book series. And the third book takes place 10 years after the events of this book. So we're going to follow whole new characters. So I just don't know if I want to continue on with this series because I fell in love with the characters from the first book, and I was hoping that it would transcend, like, follow their story or whatnot. And seeing as how I didn't connect as strongly to the characters, this being 10 years after the first book, I just don't know if I'm going to connect with characters that I'm not connected to already in this book that are going to be introduced in the next book 10 years later. I just don't know if I want to put in the mental power to invest myself in continuing this series. This one had absolutely no steam at all in it, not even a puff, because this does have a sexual rep in it. Our main character, she just doesn't see herself being in a relationship that way, which is again something that I appreciate being represented, but I just wasn't emotionally connected to her or any of the characters in this story. I wanted to actually get to the end of the book so I could see what was going on with the characters that I fell in love with from the first book. So it is a series I recommend if you're looking for dark fairy tale-esque, very whimsical, has great disability and mental health rep because the author herself is a wheelchair user, so it's very authentic. But I just don't think I'm going to continue on with this series because I'm not going to get any more from the characters I loved from the first book. So I think I'm good. I think I'm good with the first book just being in my mind as a standalone and me loving those characters for who they were. So those are the 3 books that I read this week. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are. But if you don't want to comment that but would like to let me know that you made it to the end of this video, could you leave me a moon emoji? Any phase. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, good luck on your upcoming week of reading. Bye!